I'm Dr. Deb Butler, and you are listening to Thinner Peace and Menopause and Beyond. This is episode number 427. Well, hello, all my dear friends all over the world. I don't know how many of you heard my podcast last week where I was talking about the Thinner Peace Challenge for the summer. If you didn't hear about it, I'm going to talk about it again today, and I'm going to give you something new to do from what we did last week. So, this is what I talked about last week. Last week, I decided, and I'm deciding for you too, that summer is going to be different, that you're going to think differently about summer than you ever have before, because everything that I talk about has to do more with about what you think than about what you do. So I know, at least if you're anything like I was, summer was a time when I would either dread it, I'd get ready for it, something about how my body was going to look and what I was going to do to get it to look good. And this summer for you, I want you to think differently than I did. And nothing against doing good things for you or your body at any time of the year. But it seems like in summer, you have a different kind of a headspace. And I think it's a great place to change the way that you think. So, what I talked about last week in our Thinner Peace Summer Challenge was this. Can you eat between the twos? I talked about eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full as a challenge for you to try just one meal at a time. When you sit down to eat, can you tell how hungry you are? And can you think about it for a minute? And as you're eating, can you feel yourself filling up? And can you stop at what I call a +2, which is just the ease and the whisper of feeling content and full? You could still go out for a walk. You don't feel like you want to go to sleep unless you're really tired, but the eating is not making you tired. Let's just put it that way. So, eating between the twos is one of the tools that I came up with many, many years ago about how to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And it was the biggest game changer for me. And it's a big game changer for most of the people that listen to me or work with me. Because of all the things you might have heard about dieting, one of the things you probably never heard is, do you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full? And I think that should be the main thing, the main topic, the main focus more than anything else. So, like I used to be, and I used to go to Weight Watchers whenever I gained my weight, and then I would be up to my old stuff, which is eating without any regard to my body, without any regard to health. I was just like on a spree. Instead of a shopping spree, I was on an eating spree. Anytime I got my weight down, it was time to go on an eating spree. And an eating spree meant no connection whatsoever. Now, when I went to Weight Watchers, the deal back then was all about points and counting your points. And this is really nothing against any diet, including Weight Watchers, other than what my mindset was like and what your mindset may be like, which is maybe somebody knows better than you, but you don't really know how to stop eating when you're full or eat when you're hungry. Now, that's not part of the Weight Watchers protocol, really. It's really more about staying within a number of points. Every diet has their own thing, being a keto diet or whatever, they have their deal. And I think, at least for me, from years of being on diets, I learned a lot from many of these. I learned that protein's a good thing. I feel good when I eat it. I don't need all protein, but I certainly do better when I eat it. I learned that when I tried the keto diet mainly, and that fat is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. When I was on Weight Watchers, I learned basically that you could eat anything you wanted if you stayed within the points. And that's kind of when I learned my whole concept of joy eating, which is one of the tools that I use, is how to eat a non-nutritious food in a very, very mindful way to feel like you could eat anything that you wanted. It's just, what do you really want? And that those foods are not off limits. So there's not really any off limit foods. So for this summer and the challenge, my first week's challenge was all about can you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full? Can you identify your hunger numbers and your fullness numbers and start getting into what we call normal eating, which is eating between the twos? And I know that we weren't born with numbers in our head about hunger and fullness. We were really just born with our body equipped and wired to stop us and to start us. Little signals, a lot of hormonal signals that if that's all we did our whole life, you and me in menopause wouldn't be talking because you wouldn't be having a problem. Now, I am not going to say that menopause is a time where you won't gain weight. I'm just saying if you've been a woman and you've been struggling your whole life with eating, menopause is not going to make it easier for you. But it's a good time to really get to know your body if you haven't done it up until now. Now, if you're anything like me, you haven't. I thought I was a healthy eater, which I was when I was on Weight Watchers. And then when I was on my shopping, quote, food spree, then it was all bets off because I really, really dreamed of this fantasy that I could be thin and eat whatever I wanted. And I know a lot of you think that too. So it's like you want to go back and do that thing when your weight is off. It's like that fantasy. But this is what I want to tell you. And this is what I would love to challenge you with this week is that the way you lose your weight is the way you're going to keep your weight off. In other words, the way you get there is the way you're going to stay there. It's not like you're going to get there one way and stay there a different way. That's kind of a roots. It's like a surprise for a lot of people. And I know for me that Weight Watchers had a maintenance plan and this whole idea of maintenance, keeping your weight off. But I think there are so many things that mess with your head when your weight is off, thoughts in your head, the scale, the way all of a sudden you start thinking, oh, I've lost my weight. Now I can, as if it should be different. I think what you want to do, and I think what would be really great about this summer challenge is this. Figure out what you want to do now so you don't have to do something different later. And I really think one of the clues is eating a non-nutritious food or a joy food. Could be potato chips, could be cookies, could be alcohol. All of those things I considered non-nutritious foods for your body, but you enjoy them. It's a mind factor, it's a mind-body factor in terms of enjoyment, but it's really easy for it to get out of hand based on the dopamine effect of the brain. But I do think you can do it. But you can't do it if you think you're going to get there one way and stay there in a different way. I think for 30 years, I really believed it would be different when I got my weight off. And of course, the different for me was the shopping spree. I wanted to take my weight off in a diligent way, follow a plan, stay within the points, not do this, not do that. And then when it was off, it was like, okay, let's go shopping. It didn't work. What really, really changed for me was the whole concept of number one, I can eat anything I want, but how would I actually do it if I could? Now, for me, I thought potato chips was the joy eat of the century for me. I really believed I could not control myself around potato chips. I loved potato chips. That was my problem. I had no control. But whenever my weight was off, I would eat potato chips. Not a few. I would go back to believing the thought that I couldn't control myself, and I didn't around potato chips. But my weight was off, so who cared? That was kind of the deal. So the second step in the summer thinner piece challenge is this. Can you eat a non-nutritious food in a mindful way? The way that you would do it if you didn't have to lose weight. If you didn't have to lose weight, how would you eat? This was a question that I asked you last week. I really want you to think about that. For me, if I didn't think deep about it, I just thought, well, I would just eat potato chips all the time. I never really put any thought process into it. It's just a fantasy. In reality, why would I want to eat potato chips all day? I feel like crap. I wouldn't feel good. And I really wouldn't want to do it. But I would want to believe that I could. And that's what I want you to believe is that you could eat whatever you want, but how would you do it and what would you do if you knew you weren't going to gain weight? And this is the thing, because I think what we do, at least what I did, is when my weight was off, I treated food totally differently than when I was losing weight. So I was either losing weight or gaining weight for 30 years. This could be your challenge is what will I do now and so that I can stay where I am once I get there. And I don't really care how much weight it is. Really, the more weight it is that you have to lose, the more you have to practice the way that you want to eat for the rest of your life. Something that you can live with. Now, I do this no flour, no sugar experiment within the Thinner Piece program. I'm not recommending it to you now, but I do it not because I want it out of your diet forever, but because I want you to have the wherewithal of what it's like to take it out and what happens to your mind and body when the food is out. And it's amazing for my clients, the differences in how they feel and then how they want to go back to include it. If you could do it, if you could eat it, if you could always have it, how would it actually be? If you believed you could eat whatever you wanted, how would you do it? And that is what I want you to start doing now. I want you to experiment what that would be like. You may not lose weight, but you may find a way that you can. So last week we started with the idea of every single time you sit down to eat, you ask yourself how hungry you are and how full you are. And then you get my food journals, which are very, very specific Dr. Deb Butler style, because it's more about really understanding these numbers, your hunger and fullness numbers. What is it like at a +2? What is it like at a +3? What's it like at a +6? What does it feel like? So that you get very accustomed to eating between the twos and it starts feeling like that's when you should eat and that's when you should stop. Many of us don't have those signs inside of us anymore because we paid attention to something outside of us for so long that we don't even know what it is. At least that was really the problem with me is when I first heard the question of why do you eat when you're not hungry? And do you know when you're hungry? And do you know when you're full? And I couldn't answer it. And I think many of you can't either. So the Thinner Piece Challenge is number one, practicing that using a food journal that you can get by going to drdebbutler.com/change. You can get the book. It has food journals in it. It also has my hunger scale, my physical hunger scale, my emotional hunger scale. It starts introducing you to the different tools that I use. But all I want you to do in week 2 of this Thinner Piece Challenge is practice eating a joy food under the types of eating. So there's fuel eating, which is nutritious food for your body. I think a lot of you don't even know what that is. I think so many of you are so accustomed to somebody else telling you what is nutritious food for your body that you're not sure. But I find most people that I work with do know what that food is. And we call it fuel when you're eating nutritious food for your body. But when you're eating a non-nutritious food for your body that it has no place in it, it's not going to do anything for you from a physiological standpoint. It's a joy eat. It tastes good. But can you eat it and enjoy it and stop? That's a practice. That's what I want you to try this week. You start eating between the twos, mostly fuel, nutritious food, but a joy eat, something that just tastes really good, like my potato chips, you start practicing eating it mindfully and call it a joy eat. And the whole idea behind the joy eat is to eat it bite by bite. And the minute you're through enjoying it, you stop. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it's a practice. You can do it. That's the challenge. So maybe you want to be, I don't know what you want to look like this summer, but I would think like instead of thinking about what you want to look like, I want you to start thinking about what you want to be thinking. If you're wanting to lose weight, instead of putting the pressure on yourself to look a certain way during the summer, let's start thinking about thinking a certain way for the summer, which will help you looking good for the summer too. But the way you get there is the way that you stay there. You can't rush your way there because it's summer, because it'll be really hard to stay there when summer is over. So you want to get there in a way that you can stay for as long as you want, which is really the rest of your life. It's just starting in the summer. So, have you ever known anybody that was trying to get ready for a wedding and lose a bunch of weight, or it's summer and they want to lose a bunch of weight, and then summer is over or the wedding is over, and what happens? The way you get there is not the way you stay there, because you could never stay there. It's not possible. You can only do it when you're strongly motivated and have strong willpower. But willpower only lasts so long. The beauty about what I'm teaching you is that it is a practice. It is something, a mind body connection is something that is wired and normal, but also it can be relearned if you forgot. How would you have forgotten? The same way I forgot. You started following something outside of you and started thinking that something outside of you knew better about what to eat than you did, be it a point system, a calorie system, or any kind of a system. So you're old enough to know what's right for you now. This is the time where you start learning how to trust yourself and figure out what it is you would like to eat if you could eat anything you want. Could you do it in a mindful way and really enjoy it and not be telling yourself you shouldn't be eating it? You're going to gain weight. Instead, you just enjoy it and know that there will be no negative consequence because you don't do it all the time. You don't want to do it all the time. And you can stop. That is the challenge for this week. The thinner piece challenge goes on. I keep thinking of things that I want to add on to it. So last week, it was all about eating between the twos. This week is about a mindful joy eat. Do you want to plan, do it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day? How often would you like to have one of these foods, or two of these foods, or three of these foods? Where would you like to put it at? How would you like to add it? Would it be in the evening? Would it be at lunch? Would it be at a snack? What would it be? How would you like it? That I want you to think about that without the fear of gaining weight, but the idea of the way you get there is the way that you will stay there. It's not just for losing weight. It really is for a lot of different things. But I love the idea for this challenge right now is, how will I get there that I will want to stay there? And that's what changed for me, is when I started eating when I'm hungry and stopping when I'm full, believing I could eat anything I want. Potato chips became potato chips. That's what I want for you. That's what I want you to practice this summer. That's what I want you to practice in the following week. Remember, how you get there is how you stay there. Now, before I end, you know I will never stop without saying this to you. No matter where you go, no matter who you're with all week long while you're practicing these tools, please, please, please be very, very kind to yourself. And I will see you next week. Bye bye.